Hello and welcome to the Mostly True Real Estate Podcast, or at least that is the working title. This is episode one of what may very well be a one-of-one series. But my name is Nick, and I am the founder of the Tartan Team, real estate agent here in Washington, serving mostly Southwest Washington, and bringing on my co-host, dear friend, and newest addition, co-founder even of the Tartan Team, Dave Miller. What up,
Hopefully
Dave?
not too overstated. Hey, not a whole lot. How about you, man? Just
Yeah,
getting going here on the business. It's been good.
it has been good. I'm a little bit, for anybody who's watching this, a little bit disappointed that when I first popped on, you had like a Windows 98 screensaver that you were sitting inside of, which
The Palm Beach. I mean, it was a little pixelated, but it's better than this white wall behind me. So
yeah,
we
yeah.
can hope for better days. It's a little rainy here in Vancouver, so you know, waiting for
That's
the
right.
sun to come out.
We're all living in our beach screensavers. Exactly. Well, I wanted to spend a lot of this episode, frankly, just introducing you because you are new to the Pacific Northwest, having moved here from Minnesota, and really curious what would cause you to do a crazy thing like that, to leave an established business and life in the Midwest and come out here to the Wild West and try and build a real estate business with me.
Yeah, well, I'd say primarily it's your fault, actually. I mean, you moved back from Minneapolis in what, about 21, and I feel like you've been throwing the fishing line out ever since. And I finally took the bait, as I was telling one of our other friends when they were asking me a similar question. Um, yeah, my background is in a lot of different things, and the primary reason for the move was just a change of pace in life to get away from doing some of the more construction contracting work that I had been doing back in Minneapolis, and taking on a new challenge and expanding, hopefully bringing some of my expertise and knowledge in contracting and real estate investing to the Tartan Team.
That is absolutely the hope. For what it's worth, I did cast a wide and broad net in hopes of bringing anybody who I
Yeah,
liked from Minnesota out here. So far, it's just one, and I
yeah,
guess beggars
well,
can't be
yeah,
choosers. So,
yeah.
it is good to have you here. Caught an electrician in the the process.
Well, apparently, also a dishwasher repairman, as we
That's
found out last week. So
yeah.
we had to pull Nick's dishwasher apart because he'd been shoving glass down it or something. Or the exact details are still blurry, but I
Yeah,
believe it's
apparently
operational again.
not manufacturer recommended when you break wine glasses to just let the glass figure its way out. So yeah,
Something about
realtors.
voiding the warranty, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So we've got the realtor slash 911 appliance repair guy. That's really what you were looking to do out here, right? Is
Hey, listen, man. As you already said, beggars can't be choosy. But I gotta say, you know, it's always good to have a few favors over on someone like yourself. So
yeah.
I'll cash that in at an opportune time.
That is true. And when it comes to favor deficits, I am for sure in the red. So it makes sense that you would move out here as the best opportunity to be able to cash some
Time
of
to
those
collect,
in.
huh? Yeah.
um,
No,
but yeah, seriously, when it comes to your background and experience, like this is something that you're being a bit humble here, which I appreciate about you. But would really like to press in a bit more as to just I've obviously hinted at the fact that professionally you've been an electrician, owned Hot Copper Electric, which has to go down as like a top five name for electrical firms. Um, but then you've also got quite an extensive background in construction, real estate investing, both personally and helping others. So, laying it out broad, you can pick up whichever one of those links you want to talk about first. But yeah, let's just talk about some of your accomplishments and how you're seeing that sort of translate into this new endeavor on the Tartan team.
Yeah, well, I'd say the one of the big ethoses that was instilled in me primarily by my parents, but a lot of close friends and family that I worked with growing up is just to do what you do well, right? And in most of my life, that's been directed primarily in construction and building and creating things in the physical world. And so that's been primarily the focus up until pretty much this change of pace, where I'm hoping to bring some of those skills to an industry that I think could use it. My father and uncles were general contractors, and so from a very young age, I grew up working in sort of your, it's a little bit different how they'd say in region to region, but general trade. So we did a lot of roofing, a lot of decks we built, drywall work, painting, stuff along those lines. More so on the remodel side than anything uh, new construction and land development at that time. And from where I am and where I was born in Minneapolis, we have a very old housing stock, right? Significantly older than more akin to Portland, right? And then
Hmm.
Vancouver proper. A lot of your houses here in Vancouver, minus maybe just around downtown, you just don't see as many turn of the century historic houses. So
Yeah,
that was
everything
a
here is like 70s, 80s, 90s with just a few pockets. And it's almost impossible to find anything from like 1900 to 1920. Like there's so few and far between. And what would you say was like the average age of the homes in the neighborhoods that you grew up in or were working in?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, right? Because the same way we think about development here with like, oh, this maybe say the Glades development just over here by me just got built in between 2020 and 2025, and they're hopefully be finishing that up in the next couple of years. So in the exact neighborhood I was in, the majority of the houses are from say probably 1900 to 1920, right? But then maybe you go down the block a little bit and now you're in a 30s neighborhood, and then a little bit
New
further and
development
then
right
you're in a
there,
40. Yes, exactly. That's
yeah.
right. Somebody made their millions on those HUD developments, right, in the 40s. But yeah, very old housing stock, very from a contracting perspective, very dynamic projects to work on, lots of complications, stuff that now in the construction industry would be considered very non-standard, right? So that comes with all of its own challenges, right? And it makes you learn how to be a problem solver and figure out solutions to problems that you don't necessarily need to solve in some of the new construction uh, housing, because we just build stuff to we we build houses to a higher code standard, right? So some of the engineering around them is better than stuff we were doing, say, in 1900. Although you could, uh, new housing, and I'm sure we'll talk about this at some point in the future, has all of its own issues that have less to do with the engineering and more to do with the quality of the material that we're using now. But a little off on a rabbit trail there. But yes, the housing stock's very old. Um, that was what I grew up working on primarily. Uh, like I said, from very young age, I was working on construction sites.
And yeah, I mean, that's amazing to get such a general exposure to it. And yeah, like you said, that problem solving for anybody who's been in a house that was built in the 60s or before, where almost nothing is square, when it comes to doing a renovation or even trying to change out something like a window, like you find all of a sudden like, oh, yeah, this standard sizes and things, we're gonna have to get real creative to make this work. So
Yeah,
that's cool. Like
absolutely.
growing up, getting all that exposure to construction. Obviously, you were good at it, right? Like you got into carpentry pretty early. I know you've done some work on cabinetry. I've seen some of the furniture that you've made. You've made for one of our friends as a wedding gift, one of the most beautiful coffee tables I've ever seen. And I mean that, even though I say that with full jealousy, that I could use a coffee table and
Yeah, yeah. Well,
still,
maybe on the next visit back home to where all the tools are still stored in Minneapolis. But
yeah, maybe that I'm not holding my breath for
yeah,
getting my,
well, we'd have to airmail it to you, get it here by Christmas or something.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so you alluded correctly, right? I started working, with in the general construction in my early teens with my father, mostly through high school. Back in Minneapolis, there's a program that a lot essentially it's the state pays for high school. You could get your last 2 years of high school paid for, right? And so at the time, I was pretty confident that I wasn't planning on doing 4-year college, and so I decided, might as well sharpen up my skills. So I actually went to school my last year of high school for cabinet making because I had finished, other required credits, and I know it's a little bit different everywhere, but it was considered legit, I swear. And I went to cabinet making school, and that was great. I really took a lot of the things I learned there further into other things I did in the future. Primarily, I'd say it's a very underappreciated trade, just how much precision and skill it takes to to put cabinets together. And I would also lump finished carpentry into that category as a relatively underappreciated trade. Um, I finished that up, and then I was kind of looking around, and I like as you already alluded to, I uh, always built furniture as a hobby. I started that pretty young, right? And you know, much to my mother's chagrin, worrying I was going to cut my fingers off on the table saw and all that. But I got lucky, still got them all. And the I started making furniture, went to cabinet making school, and I decided I was looking around at sort of the value proposition and what I might need to do to support a family. And the unfortunate reality, at least in that local market, is there's trade positions that are a lot better compensated uh, if you're willing to do them. As an employee, you can make a good living in cabinet making if you're high up in the company or maybe an owner, right? Cabinet shops
Mhm.
do make money, but at least where we were, back in Minneapolis, the pay wasn't very good around this time. This is about 10 years ago, right? And so I was looking around, and my uncle had pushed me and said, "You should go into one of the mechanical trades, right? One of the permitted trades." So by mechanical trade, I mean uh, electrical, plumbing, or HVAC. And just by virtue of the fact that there's some inherent danger involved with the systems that are being installed, there's much more regulation around it. And as we know in real estate, anytime there's regulation around something, it allows people to charge more for the service, right? And so I finished high school, worked in a cabinet shop for a short amount of time, and then I got started in my electrical career after that. And so that was about the early childhood. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, it was a foundational experience that uh, really helped me moving forward into the first part of my career.
One of the things that I think is pretty unique about your background is that you have a lot of folks that are either like they do a lot of framing or they're good at plumbing, like big tasks, and then you have like your finish people who are not finish, but they do finish work. And usually there's not a lot of crossover between like the attention to detail carpenters, finish carpenters, and the framers can see the forest for the trees, like get the whole project done. It's pretty amazing with your background that you're really able to do both of those. And there's a lot we could talk about here. Certainly, the whole story of you and another business partner, Nate. Shout out. He might be one of our 6 or 7 listeners to
I
this
sure hope
episode.
so.
Just
You can
for that
catch some
right
flack
there.
for this, but
Yeah. Not a lot of electricians that are doing podcasting.
you'd be surprised though. It's it's
it's,
it's really picking up.
it's picking up.
Everybody's jumping on the bandwagon. So
Everybody's a freaking podcaster now, and
that's
obviously
right.
that's pretty shameless of me. Way to be the one calling the kettle calling the pot black. But the so we could talk about your experience with starting a successful company. I'd actually we'll circle back. I'd love to hear some of the coolest homes and projects that you got to work on, because I know that through your time as an electrician, you got to work on some of the most high-end real estate, a lot of custom builds in Minnesota, which was incredibly helpful for you being able to develop your own taste, as well as see like what the difference is in different levels of quality of finishes, what that means in terms of longevity, how the home lives. So wealth of knowledge there. But I think before we get into that, going back to me talking about how you have both a uh, not only general knowledge of, but practical ability to build a house, framing, all of that, and the attention to detail finish work. Would really like to hear about your own experience with doing some uh, fix and flip, or just fixer upper style of properties. Maybe hit on your St. Paul house, the first home that you bought, quickly, and then I'd like to dig in even more to the Stillwater house, because my goodness, that was quite a project.
Sure. Yes. Yeah. It was. Yeah, so St. Paul is, for anyone who might not be familiar, it's basically the sister city of Minneapolis. Think kind of like a Portland, Vancouver situation, but maybe closer in size than, say, by population, uh, that St. Paul and Minneapolis are than Portland and Vancouver. But um, I I lie a little bit, right? I always say Minneapolis because that's what
It
most
is
people can place.
it is the mostly true real estate
That's
podcast.
right.
So
That's right. We're going hard with the ethos, right? Right
yeah,
here.
that's leaning
Um,
in.
yeah, that's right. Yeah. But no, so I am actually from St. Paul, not Minneapolis, right? And the first house I purchased was, as I said, very close to where I grew up. Uh, a 1921 story and a half craftsman bungalow, right? Had all the classic charm, stucco halfway up and then shakes at the top. Really, really cute little house, right? And at this time, this was right as I was getting into the idea of property investment, and I came upon, well, we actually both know him, a fellow realtor back in Minneapolis who was very interested in real estate investment and did lots of research and uh, around primarily rental property, right? And running numbers on that and making sure projects penciled. And so I learned a fair bit from him pretty early on, and he helped me identify this property as a property that had a lot of opportunity for expansion, right? People who don't know Minneapolis, St. Paul, the Twin Cities, it's a college town and it has a pretty strong rental market because people come and they go to one of the esteemed universities and then they go on their way, right? So there's always plenty of rental turnover, especially near these colleges, which in the older part of town, as is often the case, uh, that's where colleges form, historical colleges, right? I actually live very close to a university called Hamline University, which was one of Minnesota's very first universities, founded all the way back in the 1800s. And so, anyways, the rental market was good. That was what we were looking for. We identified this property. It was a four bed, one bath property, but another difference. Most houses in the Twin Cities have basements, right? And that's primarily because we have a very low frost line. So any incoming utilities need to come in very deep to the house so that when we get our harsh winter, the pipes don't freeze, your drain lines don't freeze, all of that sort of issues. So this had an
It's funny.
unfinished
I always thought that
basement.
the basements were because of tornado shelter, but I suppose that's just a secondary benefit to
Well,
needing to get
yeah,
below the frost line.
it is a secondary benefit, but interestingly enough, in say more middle of the Midwest, Kansas, Nebraska, they have a very high um, bedrock table, right? So that's why a lot of those, people from the north, we'd always see that on the news, and we'd be like, why don't they have basements? And it's because it's just incredibly costly to dig them, in these places where you only have maybe 3 feet of soil, and then you hit a solid shelf of rock, which is not the case in Minnesota. So most places in Minnesota, right? And so we're relatively fortunate there.
And sometime we'll have to dig into the history, like flagging this for a future episode of just why the older homes in downtown Vancouver in particular, why they did initially put basements in those, because you do find them in downtown Vancouver, but anymore, like anything that's basically been built since 1960 on, the only basements we've got here are the walkout daylight basements. Anyhow,
Right.
not to
Yeah.
derail us too much. So, 4 bed, one bath fit the criteria of, hey, this is within a bunch of local colleges, strong rental market. Obviously, a 4-1 is not ideal when you're
No,
trying to rent
not not
to
not
college
at
students.
all.
So,
Yeah, it's especially, it doesn't matter what stage of life you are, the bathroom's always going to be a point of contention, right? So
yeah, yeah,
that wasn't going to work, but that was okay, right? Because we were analyzing the property for having a floor plan that could, one, just added finished square footage, which is a big play in places that have unfinished basements. Because, and maybe if your reference point out here is sort of only the walkout daylight basement, or say maybe one of the really old houses in Vancouver where the basement is either a very short ceiling or maybe even smaller than the actual footprint of the house. Most of the basements in Minneapolis are not like that. So if you could picture the first floor, whatever the full first floor of the house is, the basement is going to be roughly that same square footage, whether it's finished or unfinished. And that's just how most of the houses uh, in Minneapolis are. And so, uh, yes, we identified this as a property with a high enough ceiling to create this finished space. And on the second floor, which was a half story, we identified it as having a floor plan that could be chopped up and have some walls removed in order to add a bathroom up there. So that was exactly what we did. And you know, at the time, we were we were doing it from a fiscal standpoint in phases, right? So we added the bathroom upstairs first, and we attempted to finish that space out. And for anyone, this was, I don't know if the terms are still popular the way they were before, but the hot term at the time was house hacking, right? The idea that
yep,
you'd,
yep.
you'd get a house and then have a bunch of roommates help pay the mortgage. Uh,
Still a brilliant strategy, especially for anybody who's like wanting to be a first time home buyer. You and I, we've been
oh,
meeting with Will. Shout out to Will, who's like in his early 20s and getting into real estate, but also thinking about buying his first place. And the house hacking strategy is amazing way
definitely.
to go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and as I said to Will, I still, in a lot of ways, credit this realtor, who pushed me into doing this and gave me the knowledge and the confidence of like, "Hey, these are what numbers look like," and something that otherwise would likely be, financially unattainable for somebody who's younger or somebody who doesn't, hasn't amassed enough money for a really large down payment. There are creative ways to get into housing, and it most of the financial indicators are pretty clear that it's one of the most important uh, purchases to make to really uh, be successful over the course of an average length life, right? You gotta, renting's great for a time, but you gotta start building that equity eventually if you want to be financially successful. So
Yeah.
yes, with the help of this other realtor and my background in construction, we identified this house. And so, as I said, it was phased because it wasn't like, you know, if somebody were interested in doing this, it's not like you got to front the money for the house and then you got to front another 100 grand to do this remodel, and then like that wasn't that wasn't at all how I did it, right? We did a little bit at a time, and so we redid the upper floor uh, while
And
I was
just
living on the first floor. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
two clarifying questions. So, one, how old were you when you made this purchase?
So this was six, eight. I think 20. I think I just turned 22.
Okay.
I
So
think I
pretty
bought
young.
it.
And then the second question is you keep saying we in terms of for making the
For,
so who's the we?
for, force of habit. Me, and the occasional help from
Yeah.
whoever I could sucker into coming over to swing a hammer. Right. Uh,
Which was
once
yeah,
again, a, a running theme: beggars can't be choosers. Right. So
yeah,
I took whatever I
which
could get.
was never me. I mean, I had met you maybe a couple years before then, but I do remember vividly as you were working on the upstairs project. One of the last pieces before finishing the upstairs was replacing all of the stairs. I just remember walking into the house and seeing the staircase torn apart. It's like, bro, I think you made it worse. Which those that's kind of the theme of my contributions to any of the work that you were doing.
And it's for that exact reason that I'm confident that this is going to be a wonderful working relationship. Uh, the, no, the one that I think I always remember was the fact that uh, the I was so convinced, and I still am convinced that, three-piece shower surrounds, the ones that come in together, and then you have to caulk all the joints and the corners and where it meets, the surround meets either the tub or if it's a three-quarter shower, the base. Like,
Yeah,
I just don't really trust that, right? And so I managed to find this one piece shower surround for this upstairs, right? Because I just, back to the history, right, of having seen so many properties uh, that had flooding damage, right, from
yeah,
upstairs
yeah,
showers and bad plumbing jobs. And so I found this one piece shower, but because the staircase in this old house was really tight and it kind of doubled back, it wouldn't fit. And so I don't know if you recall this or not, but I was trying to get all of our friends at the time to do what I was referring to as the shower raising. And what I did was is I pulled one of the upstairs windows out of its opening, because fortunately at the time, the being a 21 house, all the windows had already been
yeah.
replaced with inserts where the screws go in through the frame of the window, and you just have to break the
Popping it.
seal
Yep.
and pull it out. So that was what I did, and I actually think a couple of our other friends back home. I don't think you were there, but I suckered
I
them into
was
it,
not.
and
I absolutely was not there.
we raised this thing up with cables up to the second floor and got it in, and it worked a treat. We had it all. all set. And as far as I'm aware, I've sold this house since, but still is set and ready to serve many generations because we made a good choice, which hopefully is a theme of what a big part of what I'm hoping to bring here is maybe doing a little extra effort on the front end in order to uh, have a better product in the long run, right? I think that's a big ethos of the of how, what I wanted to do in building, right? Uh, but yeah. So, anyways, shower
Yeah.
raising,
And
get the town together.
I've appreciated that sort of long term thinking because it's all too easy to cut corners, and that's one of the things that we see even a lot of builders do, save a buck or two here, and of course when they're building 400 homes in a subdivision, like a couple dollars per home over 10,000
Yeah,
SKUs, like
absolutely.
it adds up, but also when it means that like the life of vital systems to the home, like one of the new construction deals that we're well, not new construction, but a house that we're about to list that's only 5, 6 years old, and all of the seals in the windows are blown, and it's like what what corners were cut in order to make it so that a window only lasted 5 years? And there's myriads of examples of that, which I don't want to derail us, but I think that that's one of the things that I appreciate most about the sort of perspective and value that you bring is that you're able to really identify those things, not just because you obsess over quality and materials and what was used, but also because of the practical knowledge that you have. So let's kind of fast forward through St. Paul to just sort of end result. What had happened once the renovations were done, how you were living in there, like the sort of financial position that put you in.
Yeah, so the fast forward view is we finished the upstairs and the main floor was mainly done. We did some light cosmetic stuff and then the big plan was always to put a mother-in-law suite in the basement of this residence, right? And so it ended up being close to 700 square feet and laid out kind of like a studio. And once that was complete, I was able to, move into this basement studio apartment, kind of a not quite garden level, but maybe a little bit below that. It was good enough for the time, and it uh, added a ton of value to the house. But the main way I was utilizing it was, you know, because we were able to configure the house with a separate entrance, and that was something we were looking at, right, when we were trying to purchase houses, right, was thinking these things through. And we had a separate entrance, and I was able to rent the top two floors kind of as a separate unit, and that is always able to to garner more income than say the house hacking method, where you get a couple of your buddies and you're kind of doing room by room. And so St. Paul became a because primarily because of the sweat equity, right, of not necessarily having to pay someone else to do the renovation. St. Paul became a very profitable cash flowing property, almost so to the point where I was getting the mortgage, and this was back in the golden age, right? Of, you know, sub 3% interest rates. So
Yeah, yeah,
everyone who was doing this was doing really well on these deals because of the spread between your debt service and what stuff was renting for in that area was so high. But I was actually living for free, having all my utilities and um, the debt service on the property paid, and still making a little bit of money left over, which, for that time in my life, that was like, yeah, we made it. This is it. Uh, we're rolling in it, and that was good. It was the first really large project that I took on completely solo, and I learned a lot of lessons through that process that I carried over into the next property that I did a much more major renovation on, in this town called Stillwater, which is this is still what I think of as, um, you know, my home away from home, right? Stillwater's just a little town kind of outside of the Twin Cities. Maybe you could liken it to Camas
Yeah,
from a
it's
geographical distance. Maybe a little more rural, as the development from, say, Eastern Vancouver, Fisher's Landing is starting to get close to Camas. So, but for
it's
people who aren't familiar, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
it's like one of the most picturesque. It makes so many lists for like best small towns in America, across USA Today and major publication. Like it is the coolest little town, tucked in on the St. Croix River, right on the border of Minnesota and Wisconsin, and it definitely like has that artisan, local, lot of local pride kind of feel. Like
Yeah,
for most of our listeners, like very much a sort of downtown Camas kind of a
yeah,
vibe.
definitely.
Um, yeah. So as you finished up the St. Paul project, and what had you even looking for? Like a Were you just hungry for another project? Was there something about Stillwater? Was this something that just fell into your lap?
Yeah, well, so once again, going back to sort of the long-term mindset, right? Uh, St. Paul was never a permanent play in terms of this was the place I was planning on residing. I was always planning on buying that property, renovating it, and then renting it out. And so I had finished the project, and I was probably about a year stable. Uh, and this, we're brushing over a little bit of the difference in, career. A lot of this was going on. A lot of these renovation projects were going on at the same time that I'm still doing full-time work at. Some of it was at a different electrical contractor, and then uh, some of that bled over into having started our own business, as you already mentioned. Um,
Hot copper, baby.
that's right, Hot Copper Electric. And so yes, I had had about a year in St. Paul with the property done. It was making good money, and I felt like, yeah, this is the time to move forward and take on the next project and maybe find somewhere a little more permanent to land. So that was what we did. I went and found a house, found another project, I should say.
Yeah. Real quick. So I want to dive into how you identified this property. But this week's episode is sponsored. And so I did want to do the quick ad read. That our first episode is brought to all listeners by none other than the Tartan Team. And so if you've made it this far, one, we appreciate you. And two, if you are looking for more optionality in real estate, you should talk to Dave and I. All right. That was my ad read.
Do it.
It
What did we
legitimizes
pay
us.
for that? What is
Yeah, it's in the operating agreement. So
good, good. I'll have to
well,
check into that.
yeah. All right. The So with this Stillwater, is this one that you had a same realtor friend help you discover, or is this something that you sourced on your own?
Yeah, no, this was one that I was kind of in the market, kind of watching stuff, keeping an eye out for any deals, and I I identified it myself, and I decided that I ran a lot of the numbers myself, ran the comps in for the area around it, and seeing what the sort of after repair value could be on the property, and I brought it to my real estate buddy, and the two of us together we got this house under contract, and it was definitely a creative financing deal, right? Because this house was in such significant disrepair. We're talking major structural damage, um, that a regular, a conventional loan wasn't going to work for the property. It had to be a rehab loan. Uh, just just too many things wrong with it, right? It was
Mhm.
essentially, to cut to the to to cut a little further into the story, it is essentially a tear down, right? So much significance. The structural damage was so significant that from a money standpoint, it in a lot of ways would have been faster and more effective to just tear the property down. Part of the difficulty with this town that I did this project in is that there's some pretty strong protections for historic homes, and because this property was built in 1902, it fell under these regulations that said you couldn't do X, Y, or Z, and um, the bar for a total tear down was incredibly high, right? And
Hell,
so
hell hath no fury like a historical society that
no,
wants to protect the block. And
not
you start screwing around with even if the home is a complete dump, like I don't know. This seems to be true across all sort of historic districts and the boards that manage them. Um, there are some strong personalities that are there to protect their kingdoms, and you got run through the ringer on what pretty much everything that you needed to get approved by them.
I did. It was an uphill process for sure, to maybe understate it a little bit. We the and a quick note on that, which is on one hand, I am for it, right? To tear down some of these historic properties that have craftsmanship that we're not putting into the new structures we're building would be a shame, right? And so on one hand, I do believe that it's a valuable thing. Uh, Sort of my argument with these guys, and it's just a little small town, 20,000 people, local city council type deal, and you're dealing with these boards that are appointed. And my argument was, it's like, well, more, we need a more micro case by case assessment of these structures, right? They have these guidelines and this code that they're meant to follow, and they're it, the the theme through the process was an inflexibility to look at stuff on a case by case basis, right? And maybe someday we could do a bigger deep dive and show some photos of what this property looked like. But it wasn't a property that looked in its historic condition. It had already been added on to the point where no one from an architectural background would really recognize it as being authentic to its vintage, right? It didn't look like the house that was put up in 1902, and it wasn't like a slight modification. It was, it was a cobbled together mess, and this was where there wasn't enough case by case granularity to their assessments on the structure, right? Where they're just like, well, it's built before 1946, so it has to abide by all these rules. Like, guys, listen, this place is literally falling over on its own. And interestingly enough, I talked with the head building official uh, through the course of the project quite a bit, and we were talking about this, and this was the building department and the planning and historic commissions were a little bit at odds in this town, which is not entirely uncommon situation for these sorts of cities that have this issue. And she was just saying that there's a lot of people who do demolition by neglect, is what they call it, where they
Yeah,
say, oh, you won't let me tear it down, I'm just not going to maintain it, repair the roof, just keep letting it get
nature
soaked
do its
more and
thing.
more.
Yeah.
Yep, until it eventually just falls over, and then once it falls over, then they say, well, it fell over, now we can do what we want on the property, right? So there's a myriad of opinions on what's right and wrong, and I guess I'll just go on record saying I am grateful that there's a historic commission in Stillwater in the town. I just wish that they could look a little more case by case on some of these structures that are so significantly damaged, right? Because that is the issue, is when you make these projects already more expensive than they are, uh, um, you know, dollar dollar per square foot. I probably could have built. I'm not probably. I'm confident I could have built the same house as the one I rebuilt, my property. I could have built that house cheaper on a dollar per square foot basis on a new lot, which is what it would have been had I been able to bulldoze the house. So we're maybe jumping ahead in the story a little bit because we know Nick's already heard the story and alluding to the fact that the property uh, needed to be repaired in a very, very funny way, which the primary issue was the foundation. And so, because I went round and round with the city and they wouldn't let me tear the house down, uh, I had to do what in the business is called an underpin, right? So you hold the house up underneath with big beams while you take out the old foundation that is failing and lay a new foundation up underneath. And it's incredibly time consuming and
It was the
tech.
craziest looking process. You'd send me pictures of you underneath this house that, I mean, it essentially looks like it's held up on like the kind of jacks that you'd use to raise your car up when you need to change a tire. And you're just down there like digging out massive boulders and rock, and uh it looks sketch as all get out. And
Yeah,
the fact that you had the know-how to rent the equipment and do this yourself is it's either beyond impressive or beyond stupid, but it worked out. So it must be the impressive part.
definitely probably a bit of both. I mean,
Sure.
as you said, there's lots of different equipment to make it work the way to make the work easier. And unfortunately, not being in it's a highly specialized business, house moving, and not being in that, I only had so much access to the equipment, right? And so we made it work with what we had, and that goes back to having done uh, projects like that on a much smaller scale over the years. But yes, the process was long. It was a grind for sure, and it took a couple of years to get the house completely finished, right, start to stop, and just slowdowns with permitting and the city, and the fact that we were rebuilding a foundation underneath a house, uh, just
Yeah,
all these things.
rebuilding a foundation, if I recall right, deepening it so that you had the possibility at least of finished space, but certainly even just for storage and things. And then you did all new plans for everything above grade with engineered drawings. You added an entire floor and had the creative restraints of everything had to be approved not only by the city and permitting offices and all the normal stuff, but also by the historic society. I mean, and you're doing it 90+% of it yourself. It's a Herculean effort. It's crazy.
It well, yes, it was. Like I said, it's an uphill battle, and like the adage goes, "How do you eat an elephant?" And it's one bite at a time. And um, it stretched me in ways I hadn't been stretched before, and I had to learn a lot of new things, more so on the permitting side and the dealing with the city, right? That was the swing of the hammer. That wasn't particularly new to me, but the learning, the permitting, and sort of the bureaucracy that comes with this bouncing back and forth to get the design exactly where everyone can say, okay, we feel good, and then give you the approved stamp. And it was, yeah, it was a project that I could have never anticipated being as difficult as it was. And it but like is the case with most things, it's the harder things that you have to really strive for and work at, that really teach you new things, and make you a better, more sharpened version of yourself. That's and it's just so funny how universally applicable so many of the lessons learned are in even just the work we've been doing in the last couple weeks since I got out here. And yeah, it overall it wasn't incredibly difficult, but it was a project. It gave me experience that you couldn't necessarily recreate in any other way or and other under any other circumstance.
Yeah. And just to give our listeners context, I'll see if I can find a way to add in the show notes, like some photos and whatnot. But the finished product here, like Dave's Stillwater home, could easily go toe to toe with any of the custom builds in the parade of homes that we host here in Clark County every year, from the standpoint of design, quality of finishes, thoughtfulness in the way that it's laid out. I mean, it really is a work of art and just a lovely, lovely home. Um, and I know that's one that you're planning on keeping. That was not the
No,
proverbial
no.
fix and flip. That is
No, no, no. And I appreciate you saying that. And it's maybe someday I'd love to get into some of the maybe we'll do a series sometime on uh the choices that go into to making a space that is really well. And if all I fooled was you, but I like to think that it turned out well and
I know a
is
few people who've been
a
fooled. If there is
yeah, good
if it is a mostly true
marketing.
renovation
Yeah,
project, yeah,
mostly true.
like you've got us all fooled, man. It turned out beautifully.
Well, I appreciate you saying so, but uh, yeah, I would love to at some point go through and
Yeah,
maybe talk about some of the decisions and stuff that goes into creating a space like that that serves people uh, well in multiple facets and in ways that people might not think about, just in terms of floor plan layout and then sort orientation of the house in terms of a cardinal direction and uh, just
yeah.
all the back end things you can do that you're afforded to do if you're building a house and you have the opportunity to uh, make modifications before drywall goes up. Right, there's just a very significant amount of upgrades you can do for not a very significant cost. Right, and so it's those little details that if you add them in at the right time, they can make a very big impact in how the home feels and the livability and the performance of it. And those are a lot of things I'm passionate about, and I'm hoping to bring as we're thinking about helping people pick out, the house they're wanting to buy or build, uh, with a local builder.
I mean, it's a huge, huge value that you bring to our clients in that regard, because there's just so few realtors locally who have that kind of experience and know-how and ideas on costs and longevity of products, or even just the availability of what's out there. And in an area as rich in development, and we really do, like, we have some incredible custom builders here locally. um, but of course, the builders, like, their businesses at the end of the day, like, they've got their profit centers and ways that they're trying to bump up the price. And so to be able to really dive into the nitty gritty of, like, hey, here's where your money is actually well spent. Here's the things where it's kind of wasted. To have that sort of oversight and guidance is where a Dave in particular adds just a tremendous amount of value. Now, I want to be sensitive to the time, because I do think that's a great idea for us to do another future episode. Look at this. We're already talking about future episodes. I love it. But to really dive into, like, the choices that you made in your Stillwater project, lessons learned, why this product, not that one, and how some of that translates to our clients here. Also, would love to sprinkle into that experiences that you had from wiring up all kinds of home, whether it was old renovations and seeing very historic homes that were brought down to the studs, or some multi-million dollar custom builds that you got to wire up. You even did the first container home in Minnesota, so we could talk
We
about that
did,
at
yes.
some point
Yep.
too. Which the idea of wiring up a all metal structure sounds it sounds about as crazy as putting your house on jacks. Living dangerously, Dave. I like it.
I listen. I hope whatever I become, I just hope it's not dull, right? And
Yeah.
you are correct. There's some unique challenges with container homes, and I could speak more on that. But yes, I'd love to dig further into some of those things and how I think they really relate to um, making good choices and what we're advising people on now. And buying a house is the biggest. Buying a house, building a house, renovating a house. These are huge, huge financial choices in life, right? And they can, if you make the right one, they can influence your life in a trend for the positive. And at some point we'll have to go through sort of your home buying journey back in Minneapolis over to here, and how that's helped you, right? And so it's not just me, it's everybody, right? And but
Yeah.
it's a hugely important part of the American dream, and being financially stable. And so we want to help our clients, make a good choice, buy a good home, and buy the best home that they can afford to buy. And like you had already said earlier, alluding to talking about the long-term cost of owning a home, right? If we spend a little more now on something better, how's that going to impact us in 10 years? How's that going to impact us on if we sell the house, and the desirability of the house, and if it's falling apart in fast order, like window seals are blown, and you're having to do all this extra legwork because you thought you saved money. um, you know, uh, from years in the business, I always we always prided ourselves on being the middle of the range, right? You definitely don't want to be the most expensive guys in contracting, right? Those most of the time those guys are kind of shaking people down. And then there's also the guys who are, just running around, and they're not even trying, and they're just throwing bids out, throwing numbers out. We'll take whatever we can get. And I always wanted our company and our pricing to be right in the middle, not on one end or the other of the spectrum. And I used to tell customers, because I'd get people all the time who'd be like, uh, you're this much more than we found a cheaper guy. And I'd say, that's okay. We were always very busy. We were at a fortunate time in the trades where most people were really busy. But I'd say your cheapest quote might be your most expensive,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
and that's in talking about callback, and if the system doesn't work the way it's intended, and that applies at a larger level to houses too, right? Like saving a couple grand because one house might be cheaper than the other, that could be the most expensive 10 grand you ever saved, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like us together, we can speak well to our clients, and advise them well on what makes sense, and what is value, and then what is value engineered to the point where it's no longer quality.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's so well said, because I think the aim is the same, whether it's helping somebody buy their first home, maybe in their early 20s, 30s, and wanting to do house hacking. That can be one of the most dangerous markets to look in, because there are so many houses that are essentially just polished up turds. And
Absolutely.
once you start to look past the cosmetic improvements that might have been made, you're looking at tens, 20, just crazy thousands of dollars in work that's going to need to be done in the next few years, and that can totally ruin the investment. And similarly, when you're building a totally custom home, um, just recognizing like, yeah, it might be a couple percent more to go with this product instead of this product, but it's going to add to the comfort, the longevity, the things that really impact your lifestyle. That yeah, this is probably worth it, or not worth it, and we're able to help save our clients there. So I'm really excited about the additional expertise that you bring with the way that our partnership and team is structured. It is nice that it's most teams, it's like you kind of have the agent on the team that you're working with, and you don't get much from anybody else on the team. That's just not how we're structured. Is that you get both of us and the different levels of expertise and strengths that we bring. I think in the next episode, it'd be good for us to chat about why, like, what it is that drew you to the Tartan team and the model. It'd be good for us, frankly, to just talk about what that model is and how it's unique in the world of especially Clark County real estate. Because as I've made some big shifts in the business over the past 6 months, you've been the key person that has helped shape and inform those that I've bounced ideas off of for probably the past 18 months. And so would really love to get your insights and just share, all right, this is a big transition moving from Minnesota to Washington, kind of stepping away from the trades and getting into this crazy business of real estate. So I look forward to having more of that discussion. For anybody who's made it this far with us, do make sure that you've subscribed, whether this is on YouTube or you're listening on Spotify or Apple. Click the subscribe button, so that way you catch the next episode. But from the heart, like I'm just so genuinely excited to have you here, and I know that we both rib each other a lot, but it's all because of the respect that I ultimately have for you, even if that's actually somewhat hard to admit, especially on camera.
I appreciate it. I think I had already said this at a previous point. There's not a lot of people I'd move across the country to go into business with, and not to say that Vancouver and Washington doesn't have its own draw from all sorts of perspectives, and it's beautiful out here. But as was previously discussed, there were some other cities that were in the runnings for looking at this change of pace and change of career, and it's the respect is mutual. So I have already in the several weeks we've been here very much enjoyed the work together and the thinking about how to best help people in real estate here. And I look forward to the near future when hopefully we can help more.
Yeah, 100%. If anybody wants to check things out, thetartanteam.com, shoot Dave an email, Dave at thetartanteam.com. I'm Nick at thetartanteam.com. We'll catch you in the next one. Thanks, everybody. There.